out that the desire to debate, befriend, and lurk on internet strangers runs deep.
13 stories, 7 levels. I've personally gone through hundreds of Reddit posts to bring you only the most horrifying and unexpected revelations. Some of these are so extreme that Reddit has tried to wipe them from the internet. So as always, viewer discretion is highly advised. Level 1. Trusting gut instinct. Marriages are built on trust, and sometimes on the quiet faith that the person beside you will act in character. But when that person begins acting in ways that feel strange and unnatural, unease creeps in. For Redditor Coworker Dilemma, that unease began with what looked like kindness and ended with a suspicion that shook her entire reality. My husband has worked with Kelsey for the last 2 years, and I never thought anything about their relationship was strange until now. For the past 5 months, the amount of time that has lapsed since my husband found out that Kelsey was pregnant, he has gone out of his way to support her in a way that makes me uncomfortable. I might be able to understand his actions if they weren't so extreme, but they mostly strike me as downright strange and out of character for him. For one, when he found out she was pregnant, he came to me and asked if he could give her $1,000 to help her with some of her expenses. He said that Kelsey's baby father was out of the picture and she was struggling. I don't know Kelsey personally, but I can sympathize with her situation. I agreed to let him write her a check for $250. I did think it was odd, though, because my husband has never been all that charitable. I've never known him to be the type of person that goes out of his way to help a coworker or a stranger, but whatever. A few weeks later, my husband came to me and asked me if we could help Kelsey out. This time, he wanted to buy a pram for Kelsey. The one he had picked out was quite expensive, so I wasn't comfortable just giving him the okay. We spent about a week discussing it before we finally agreed to purchase a cheaper one for her. This came after he asked her if the second one would be okay. I took the opportunity to ask him how much more money he wanted to spend on Kelsey and her baby. We had already spent $500 on them at this point, and I was starting to get concerned. We had a fight about this where he accused me of being selfish. He said that he was trying to do a good deed for someone and that he thought I would be happy to support a young mother-to-be like Kelsey and her baby. I did feel a little guilty afterwards, so I backed off. Fast forward to last week. I found out after the fact that my husband had bought a $150 gift card to Babies R Us for Kelsey as a Christmas present. We had another fight about how much money he's spending on her and her baby, and again, he accused me of being stingy. I asked him how much more he planned to spend, and he told me that he didn't know. I asked him if he could see how this situation could make me uncomfortable and how it might lead to me thinking something was going on between them. He said that he was disappointed that I would think his good deed was anything other than him trying to help a coworker. He has been giving me the silent treatment since that fight and making passive-aggressive comments, which is frustrating. I can't get him to understand that my concerns are legitimate. Besides, it's not like we have the ability to keep spending this kind of money on Kelsey. At first, OP's husband's behavior could almost pass as generosity. An unusual kindness, maybe, but not impossible to explain. After all, men are drawn to help pregnant women for a reason, a basal instinct to support the continuation of the species. Yet the more OP tried to rationalize it, the less sense it made. Why was he so invested in another woman's pregnancy? Why was he pushing for gifts and expensive purchases, despite never showing this kind of compassion before? It was the kind of unease you try to push aside until it starts keeping you awake at night. And the deeper OP looked, the harder it became to convince herself that this was just a good deed. Because soon it wasn't just money or expensive gifts, it was time, attention, and a level of intimacy that went a little further than charity. In addition to spending money, my husband also has spent a lot of time helping Kelsey in other ways. He spent time fixing up things around her apartment before the baby comes and doing other odd jobs for her. And all of this makes me extremely uncomfortable, but anytime I bring it up, he accuses me of trying to stop him from helping someone in need of assistance or being greedy. He won't acknowledge what I think is very worrisome behavior. At this point, I wonder what I'm supposed to do. I think he really is trying to do a good deed, but part of me worries that something else is happening. I don't want to believe he would cheat on me. He's never given me a reason to suspect this, but I can't help but wonder sometimes, especially when he's gone with Kelsey to her OBGYN appointment on 2 occasions, though he claimed it was because she needed a ride. Does he have a point? Am I being selfish for hassling him over helping Kelsey? How should I try to get him to understand his behavior is making me uncomfortable? I'm not sure how I should handle this situation. Nothing seems to be working. By now, OP's doubts have already started gnawing at her. She wanted reassurance that she was just overthinking, that her husband's actions weren't as strange as they felt. In the comment section, speculation ran wild. The most common theory was one that OP refused to believe. Sounds like she's pregnant with his child, TBH, one user wrote, to which OP responded that she had considered the possibility, but concluded it didn't make sense because outside of his bizarre affinity for his pregnant coworker, OP's husband has not given her any reason to doubt his loyalty. But a few commenters went further still, and one question in particular stood out from the rest and forced OP to confront a deeper truth, one that had been staring her in the face the whole time. Does Kelsey even know you exist? She's definitely pregnant with your husband's child. The only questions are, has he been lying to her about his marital status? And are you going to make him truthful when he tells women 10+ years younger than him he's single? OP didn't have an answer for this and never returned with an update. And perhaps that's the scariest part, because if the story stopped here, it means that somewhere right now there's a woman who still doesn't know the truth. A husband who may still be living 2 lives, and a baby whose life began with a lie. Level 2. The knife in the hands of a 5-year-old. In horror movies, there are few images more unsettling than a child holding a knife with evil in their eyes. It's a sight that distorts their innocence. On screen, these scenes feel wrong and unnatural, but that's the beauty of fiction. You can look away. For one 17-year-old Redditor posting under Run Specialist 9414, there was no such escape, because the horror unfolded across his dinner table. It began, as he explained, with an ordinary meal. During dinner, my little brother, 5 male, was playing and jumping around instead of eating. My mom and I scolded him for it. A minute later, he walks into the kitchen, comes back, and he's holding a f***ing knife. He wasn't waving it around or saying anything, but he just stood there with it after, and the look on his face. I swear for a moment, it was like he realized he messed up, like he regretted it. But still, the fact that he even did that in the first place is terrifying. The thing is, he's not a bad kid. He's always energetic, bright, cheerful, and joyful, and just a normal 5-year-old most of the time. But then there are moments like this where I don't know what's going on in his head. It's exhausting. That alone is disturbing as hell. I immediately freaked out, but my mom, she took the knife, scolded him a little, hit him lightly, and then carried on as if nothing happened. Like, are we not going to talk about the fact that a 5-year-old's first reaction to anger was to grab a weapon? If my dad was home, he would have whooped his ass for this, and honestly, I think he should have. I'm usually against hitting kids, but this is different. If we don't make it clear that this is not okay, what's going to stop him from doing something worse when he's older? My mom doesn't get it. Instead of properly disciplining him, she just keeps pampering him. Right after all this, she's back to asking him, "What do you want to watch on YouTube?" That interaction only lasted minutes, but in that single moment, OP got a glimpse into his brother's future, and what he saw terrified him to the bone. When OP argued with his mom about how serious this was, she brushed him off. Her biggest concern wasn't her son holding a knife, it was whether the neighbors could hear OP raising his voice. And it's not just this, OP continued. She never holds him accountable for anything. She even apologizes to him when he's the one at fault. Even if he throws tantrums or does something wrong, she either lets it slide or straight up says sorry to him. How is he ever going to learn right from wrong if she keeps doing this? I don't even know what to do at this point. Am I overreacting, or is this as serious as I think it is? Child psychologists note that aggression in early childhood isn't unusual. Tantrums, hitting, even threats are all part of learning boundaries, but most children test limits through words, not weapons. A 5-year-old instinctively reaching for a weapon is different. It signals that his ideas of conflict and resolution are already being shaped by violence. While OP sought some clarification on his brother's behavior and what could be done to improve it, he never expected the finger would be pointed back at him. One user, Cucumber Dick, cut to the point. You guys hit him as a first move to let him know you're unhappy with his behavior, and now you're surprised that his first reaction to being displeased with your behavior is to threaten violence? It's apparently how you've taught him to deal with interpersonal conflicts based on your description of things like dad would have whipped his ass and he should have. It's so weird to me that you're not putting 2 and 2 together. To these commenters, OP's brother's behavior was a reflection of a cycle of violence he's exposed to at home. But OP pushed back. In an edit, he explained that his words had been misunderstood. No one in my family encourages violence, he wrote, and I've actively stopped any form of hitting. Everyone in my family is against violence now. When I said my dad would have whipped his ass, it was just a figure of speech, not something that actually happened. Also, when I mentioned hitting, I didn't mean anything extreme, just a light tap on the hand or leg, not actual harm. But even that has stopped, and I don't support any kind of physical discipline. The real concern, OP emphasized, wasn't their choice of punishment, but his brother's instinct. But Redditors weren't letting this one go. They pointed out that it boiled down to parenting regardless. If OP's brother was given free rein to consume content on YouTube with no one there to guide him or explain the nuance to him, it means he isn't receiving the moral and social lessons that should come from parents. Bolstered by the suggestions to stay calm and simply talk to his brother, OP returned with one final update. Edit 2. I asked him why he did it, and he said he saw it on a YouTube video. I should have asked earlier, but I was more focused on stopping the situation in the moment. Now I know where it came from, and I'll make sure to monitor what he watches more carefully. So, OP approached his brother in a calm manner during an arts and crafts project where they made a Janapati idol from clay. In that softer, more leveled environment, OP's brother opened up to him and recognized what he did was extreme and apologized for his behavior. The wheelchair fetish. Under the subreddit True Off My Chest, people often confess to the most heinous things they have done or seen. These confessions are disturbing, particularly because they expose the cruelty humanity is capable of unleashing on each other. But Redditor Throwaway 917265's confession stands apart because the very thing she fears the most isn't out there, it's inside her. I honestly feel sick even writing this out, but the shame is absolutely destroying me and I need to not only let it out, but also kind of put it into words to make sense of it in my head. This feels like a confession of my sins. I am deeply sorry if anyone feels offended or disgusted by what I'm about to write. It started when I was really young, I think way before puberty, when for some whatever reason that I honestly don't know, I fantasized about fictional characters or myself being injured or disabled. I also liked it when there were scenes of characters in shows being injured, on crutches, wheelchairs, etc. Later, when I reached puberty and started discovering my sexuality, at some point I realized that the funny feeling I sometimes got in the situations mentioned above that I always mistook as wanting to pee was actually arousal, and then it turned into a fetish. I started pleasuring myself to pictures or videos. At one point it hit me how creepy it was, so I switched to fetish art of people in wheelchairs, amputees, and later mostly fantasized about myself being in such situations. The worst part is that those fantasies were completely non-sexual in nature, just going about life being disabled. It turned into an addiction in some way. The fantasies started getting progressively weirder and more disturbing just to keep the excitement going, and no matter how much guilt and shame I felt about it after I was done, I kept coming back to it. I feel sick and disgusted with myself just thinking about it. What makes this post hit so hard is her awareness. OP never excuses her fantasies, never pretends they're harmless. Instead, she breaks down just how warped they've become, how they've transformed, giving way to something much more disturbing. She writes, "Quite recently, the sexual interest has kind of waned, partly because I got interested in other things, partly because I didn't want to masturbate to something so messed up anymore, and it became easier when there appeared other things that got me going. Although unfortunately the arousal is still there sometimes, it just makes me feel anxious and grossed out with myself, and it doesn't create desire to masturbate. I also still find some weird but not in the slightest pleasure in some fantasies or fan fiction about a character being disabled, mostly but not only when there's elements of a romantic partner taking care of them / supporting them. What's the weirdest to me about it is that it has always been almost solely a fantasy in private thing and didn't really translate into real life. Although there is some part of me that probably would find that enticing about a person, I never wished to hook up or be in a relationship with a disabled person particularly. My crushes in romantic relationships were able-bodied, and I suspect or hope that if I were to be attracted to someone who is disabled, it would be because of who they are as a person and if they're my type looks-wise, not because they're disabled. Because of all the shame and guilt I feel, and the fact that I most likely have OCD that is currently fixated on that shame and guilt, every time I see something that has anything to do with disability, I'm super anxious that I'm feeling something I should not be feeling, and I don't know anymore what is real and what is OCD-induced. Most people who have fetishes try to engineer situations where those fetishes are satisfied, but with OP, it's almost the opposite. That's the most unsettling part of it. Yet, even though she stopped feeding it, the fetish remained, locked in her private world, making her question who she really was. She ends the post on this gut-wrenching note. I hate how gross and disrespectful it is to people who are actually struggling because of disability. I hate not knowing why I feel this way and why I like such things, and I hate that from everything I've read, it seems that it's impossible to get rid of a fetish. I just want to be a normal person. I'm excelling at school, I have a loving family and group of friends, I'm rather socially active, and yet I feel I'm a disgusting weirdo on the inside. Level 3. I hope my mother dies. This is one of those confessions that unsettle because they put into words thoughts most people bury deep inside. The dark, intrusive ones we pretend could never belong to us. The Redditor, posting under the name Pixie Puke, doesn't hide behind flowery language. I was born to salvage my parents' relationship. They were on the rocks, and my mother convinced my dad that having another kid would fix them. Spoiler, it didn't. One of my earliest memories is my mother screaming at me that I'm the biggest mistake she ever made and that she would never love me. She also liked to remind me that I should have never existed. She had a miscarriage before I was born, and she only wanted 2 kids. I only lived because my brother died. During my whole childhood, she would threaten to kill herself and/or burn things down if I didn't behave. My parents finally divorced when I was around 10, and I was able to stay with my dad, but until I moved to another country at 16, she did everything in her power to make me feel small. We had mandatory visitations, and she would just abandon me on the side of the road with my things because I said something she didn't like or wore something she didn't like. The verbal abuse never stopped. I was never good enough. At 17, I gave her one final chance. It was supposed to be just the 2 of us grabbing lunch. She invited her boyfriend. After lunch, we went on a walk, and her boyfriend hit me out of the blue because he didn't like what I said. She took his side. I haven't really seen her since then, and I haven't talked to her. Now she's dying. An operation could give her more time, but she's refusing it if I don't come to visit. I know being no contact is the only thing that helped me heal, and I know it's the right decision not to see her, as she hasn't changed at all, but I still feel guilty and incredibly sad. Sad because of the person she is and the mother she never was, and guilty because she might die quicker because of me. At the same time, I'm disgusted this is the way she tries to reach out. After years of degradation, abandonment, and violence, all inflicted by the one person who was supposed to be the OP's first shelter, that same person dangles her life before them as leverage, leaving OP with a gut-wrenching choice: protect their own healing or sacrifice it just to give their dying mother the comfort of control one last time. In the end, OP chose themselves. Right now, I just hope it ends soon. I don't want her to suffer, but I can't deal anymore. Maybe that's what makes this confession so eerie. The brutal reality that somewhere out there, they wait for the woman who gave them life to finally leave it. The stalker at the door. Some confessions don't shock because they're bizarre or extreme, but because they feel real and ordinary. The kind of thing that could happen to anyone. For rare mycologist 4304, that thing lived right outside her door, and it refused to leave. Hello, this is my first time on this sub, and I just needed some emotional support. About a couple weeks ago, this guy began knocking on me and my boyfriend's door and would not go away. He looked normal and had clean clothes, a good haircut, shaved face. At first I wasn't sure what he wanted, but it became clear he was there for the previous tenant, who I've since learned has a large criminal record for very unsavory things. I left him notes saying, "So-and-so no longer lives here. If you come again, I will call the police," etc. I never opened the door, and yet he continues to come back at all hours of the day. I've called the police 3 separate occasions. The first one, they caught him, gave him a warning, but would not give me his name, and yet still told me to get a restraining order. Like, how, without a name? He did not show up for about a week after that. The second time, they did not find him, and the third was today, where they did not catch him because the police could not get to me for over an hour. It's getting scary, I think because this was the first time I was home alone because my boyfriend is visiting family. Especially because I know now it might take a long time for police to show up. I have incident numbers for all. Today, however, I learned his name, looked it up, and found awful long lists of violent crimes, court cases, and arrests. Also, neighbors saw my notes and gave me some background. Apparently, this guy was connected to the previous tenant and broke down the door, which is now why we have a new one. I am properly scared now if I wasn't before. Boyfriend and I got a Ring camera set up 4 days ago, so this incident was all caught on camera. Something that chills me to the bone is when my boyfriend talked to him through it, stating that she doesn't live here anymore, and he says back, "I know she does, you sound just like her friend." And when my boyfriend tried to talk to him again, he got aggravated and yelled, "Shut up, I'm not talking to you." I don't know why this spooked me, but it did. Maybe it showed me just how easily his anger could rise. There's very little the police can do in situations like OP's. Unless the stranger breaks in or actually attacks, their hands are tied. On paper that makes sense, innocent until proven guilty, but in practice, it means people like OP are forced to live in limbo, trapped, waiting. I am having nightmares about someone breaking into my apartment while I'm sleeping. I am so anxious while waiting for that next knock, wondering if he'll get agitated enough to knock down the metal-heavy door again. Not sure what to do now, but cancel the lease and move somewhere else. I don't want this guy knowing my name, a necessity to file a restraining order. Now it's nearly 5:30 a.m. and I haven't slept a wink. Now at my boyfriend's house with all his family, and I can't help but think I'm crashing their party. What if he finds me here? What if he breaks in while I'm gone? I just feel so helpless. I just want to make tacos in my kitchen without being scared AF. Redditors offered advice, with some suggesting the landlord or the security of the building might know more than they're letting on if the man keeps having easy access to OP's apartment. Since making her post, OP hasn't responded. Not once, not to the warnings, questions, or the dozens of people begging her to update them. Days have passed, and all there is silence. Did she finally get the protection she needed, or did the man on the other side of the door stop knocking and let himself in? The cousin who won't stop. In 2024, a teenager jumped on Reddit for advice on how to handle a rather unsettling encounter with a cousin that left her with a disturbed feeling at the pit of her stomach. What's worse, when she recounted it to her father, expecting him to be enraged at her cousin, she was shut down and dismissed. Alone, with nothing to do and a cousin who won't stop, she turned to Reddit with her story. A few months back, I was at my little sister's birthday dinner. I was having a good time laughing and talking with my family. I hear my phone buzz, so I look down and see a text from one of my cousins that I haven't talked to in a while. I ignored it at first, but my curiosity got the better of me, thinking he might be in trouble or hurt. I read the text. "I want to tell you something, but I feel like you tell everyone." Mind you, we're freshmen in high school, and at the time I was in a relationship. I reply, "Who would I tell? Lay it on me, kid." I wait a while, thinking whatever he's going to say isn't that big of a deal. A few minutes later, my phone goes off again. I read his text. "If you weren't my cousin, I'd definitely want to be with you." My heart sunk. I looked up at my dad with a face filled with disgust. My dad asked me what was wrong, and I obviously told him. All he had to say was, He's a very distant cousin, so it's not that big of a deal. I was so disturbed with my family at that point, I decided to just leave it be and go on with my life. A couple weeks go by and I completely forgot about the situation, OP continued. I was at my house on the phone with my boy best friend and I got another snap from my cousin. I open it. God damn, you're hot. I didn't know how to reply, so all I said was, thank you. I'd get texts from him every day saying how hot I am and how he'd love to do gross stuff with me. I didn't really care anymore, I just let it go on. It gets more graphic from this point, with OP's cousin spelling out things he wants to do to her and vice versa. OP does not respond to this and is visibly disgusted by the details, but this does not stop her cousin. In fact, over the next weeks, the texts grew more frequent, more graphic, and more disturbing. OP found comfort in many of the responses Redditors left, though some of them suggested OP could have liked the attention, and that's why she's not taking any drastic measures to end it. OP left an update assuring everyone that was not the case, insisting she just wants the texts to stop. One Redditor, IPBBINC, suggested she just blocks him and simply take away his access to her. OP later provided an update saying she blocked her cousin on social media. Since they're distant relatives, it's unlikely they'll cross paths often, but that chance will always linger, and that's the cruelest part. The sting I couldn't speak about. In maximum security, survival means keeping your mouth shut. But some things you witness don't stay locked away no matter how much you try to bury them. On r/confessions, one man finally let slip what he saw behind bars and why he's never spoken of it until now. I was a really shitty person once upon a time. I was driving drunk at 22 and hit someone and killed them. I served 7 years for manslaughter. I'm not proud of it, and it's my greatest shame in life. I just try to live each day a bit better than before and live in such a way that I make amends for the life I took. In prison, I tried to take advantage of a lot of the programs there. I learned how to be an electrician, but it wasn't a great place. I was in Max for the first 2, but I got moved there due to good behavior. The maximum security prison was the most terrifying place I've ever been. Most of the guys are serving 10-plus year sentences for super violent shit and know they're gonna die there, so they got nothing to lose. I was put there because I ended a man's life, and the minimum security prison was full at the time. I survived by just keeping my head down and minding my own business. If I saw something going down, I kept my mouth shut. I managed to get assigned laundry duty, which was one of the best jobs. I was carting a full load of dirty shit one day about a year in when I came into the laundry room and saw a group of guys holding a guy down and stabbing him over and over with shivs. Unfortunately, they heard me, and their leader turned to me and looked at me while holding the shiv in his hand. He calmly said, "What do you see here?" I looked around and said, "Nothing but laundry." He walked right up to me, looked me dead in the eye, and said, "You see anything else?" I said, "No, sir, nothing at all." He nodded and said, "You should go then." I turned on my heel and walked out while that dude was lying there bleeding out and gurgling. Obviously, the guards asked me about it since I was working, and that guy was found dead in my work area just outside the camera range. I told them I didn't see shit. They offered to make petitions to get me time off my sentence or even get me out of Max. I didn't budge. I told them I didn't see nothing or know nothing. I knew that they wouldn't move me soon enough, and if I was found out as a rat, they'd probably do worse to me. They were pissed because they knew I had to know something, but thankfully, they didn't punish me. OP eventually earned a transfer to minimum security, then his release. On paper, he left prison behind. He got a steady job, put down the bottle for good, and collected his AA chips. By all accounts, he rebuilt a good life, certainly better than the one he had before, but no matter how far he runs from that cell block, he carries it with him. In his own words, "I don't think I can ever make amends." Level 4. Son buried as a man. For a little context, I'm 16, non-binary, and my older sister was 20, trans woman. I also asked that you please not make any negative comments about my sister's identity nor connect her misdoings to the trans community at large. We are not all like this. My sister has been a 4chaner for a really long time. I think she got into the website when she was like 14 and has only gone further down the rabbit hole since. She was horribly depressed, extremely misogynistic, and verbally violent at home, and generally a pain to deal with. Her grades were shit, so she never went into college. She just dwelled in her room watching anime most of the day. Then about a year and a half ago, she came out as transgender. Our parents hated it. Surprisingly enough, they didn't care about me. Hell, they even said that if I kept my grades up, they'd let me start hormones. I think they might have just been mad at her because she was unsuccessful. But since she was out of the way in most daily life anyway, they just let her stay in her room and never really kicked her out or did any of the stereotypical transphobic parent things. She was such a shut-in that she didn't even want to go through the legal proceedings to change her legal name and gender because it would be such a hassle. The only people she ever came out to was us. The rest of her friends still knew her as a guy. She's always been a terrible bully to me growing up, but I still felt a sense of kinship with her as I'd basically been raised with her tormenting me, so I just kind of rationalized it as normal. Then, about a year ago, I was in a relationship with a boy she was online friends with. He went to our school. The dude sucked and was a total misogynist, but I still craved the male validation he gave me, so I stuck around. I got super drunk at a party one night and sent him nudes, and the next morning I found out he sent them to all of his friends, including my sister. Then the tormenting got worse. Every chance she'd get, she'd bring them up and insult my gender, calling it all kinds of weird misogynistic shit. She'd make jokes, at least I hope they were jokes, about how my nudes were so ugly she couldn't even get off when she jacked off to the pictures. She'd sometimes compare my body to the weird she watches and lament that I didn't look like the lollies she watched. It was incredibly weird, but again, I felt conditioned to not tell our parents because I was scared they'd kick her out. So I just iced her out. Over time, OP shut their sister out completely, but the distance only seemed to feed her obsession. But OP could have probably ignored all of that if the jokes hadn't crossed into something physical that left OP confused and disturbed. She got significantly worse once I started ignoring her and would sometimes cry at my door begging me to let her in, sometimes switching to insulting me and calling me slurs. Around 2 months ago, the breakdowns turned to full-on manic episodes and she'd pound at my door and try to knock it down until she got too tired, and then she'd just lock herself back in her own room. A month ago, she took her own life. I was the one who found her body after she hadn't left the room for 4 days, which had happened before, but usually we heard noises coming through the walls. My dad barely cried, and my mom did, but at the same time she would grumble about how much she hated not being able to have a normal son who wouldn't do stuff like this. Her note was basically cussing out our parents and repeatedly writing about how fascinated she was with me. It kind of creeped me out because something about it doesn't feel very platonic. Hell, my father refused to let me read it at first because he, translated quote, thinks this is incest garbage. But honestly, I just think she got pornographic and mistook normal sibling affection for something more. Several Redditors agreed with OP's father's decision to keep the letter hidden, pointing out the sister's fixation blurred the line between affection and something darker. But OP couldn't see it that way. To them, shutting her out felt like the very thing that pushed her toward the end. When someone highlighted how disturbing it was to keep intimate photos of a sibling and admit to viewing them for pleasure, OP finally acknowledged what they had avoided. They may have had a blind spot for her despite everything she put them through because they didn't speak up for her when it mattered the most. She was put in a suit and buried under the name she hated, OP continued. I know that if I'd asked my parents to do otherwise, they would have eventually folded, but I was too angry and bitter at her for what her friend did to me and how she mocked me for it that I never did. I just let it happen. And now whenever I visit her grave, I feel sick to my stomach because I feel like me icing her out was what drove her to kill herself in the first place. I just had to say this here to anyone, to someone who didn't know her because I miss her so much, even though she was so horrible, and I feel so bad for what I did. Level 5. The video that stole my sleep. Curiosity feels harmless until it isn't. For one boy left home alone with the endless maze of the internet, curiosity became a doorway he should never have opened. When I was around 9 to 10, I was a very curious boy, and I loved messing around and looking at disturbing shit on the internet. I didn't usually get affected by those. I only watched those creepy MLP and FNAF animations or creepypastas, and I found them fun to watch. I've never seen a real footage of death or torture in my life, and it all seemed like a joke to me. I would joke about murder a lot and reference creepypastas at school or tell made-up horror stories to try and scare my friends. Yeah, I was fucking dumb, but I was just a child looking for attention. Thankfully, I've changed a lot and grown into a mature man, but back in the year 2016, I encountered a horrible incident while I was watching the news with my parents. It was about ISIS kidnapping and burning alive 2 Turkish soldiers, but they obviously didn't show the video. As I said, I was a curious little fuck, so I searched for that video deep in the internet, on my dad's computer, which he left home, a big mistake. And I unfortunately found it. I watched the whole clip from start to end, the speech the soldiers gave before being burnt, their screams while they were set on fire, the aftermath, and them not moving and crawling anymore, burnt to death. It was beyond hell for me. I started crying uncontrollably and screamed for my mother, but I was home alone. I didn't have a phone too, since I was very young and I couldn't call anyone. I just ran to the bathroom and threw up. I felt so dizzy. I felt like it happened in front of me. It scarred me for life. I just can't describe the horror I felt that day. The most terrible part is that it wasn't anything fictional or an animation. It was real, and those 2 soldiers died in the most painful way possible, far from their home. I cleared all the search history and just kept the feelings inside me, pretending nothing happened. I couldn't sleep at night for a few weeks after watching that video. Though OP erased the browser history, the real history was burned into his mind and could not be deleted. Even though he's now 17, OP admits that whenever it resurfaces, he breaks down in tears, still haunted by screams that never truly stopped. In the end, all he could do was document their pain. He ended the thread with this: "Sometimes my friends ask me why I always make art about war. I never told them where my sensitivity for soldiers came from." The drunk night that ended in a crash. Let me start from the beginning, and I'm sorry it's a long one, but please bear with me. I'll call him James for the sake of the story. James and I worked together, and from the very beginning I had the biggest crush on him. The fun one where you get all giddy and make sure you look cute before every shift type of crush. He'd always come up and talk to me, and I always found myself wanting to say more, but held back because I was just so shy. However, I did eventually overcome my shyness enough to be a friend to him. The day of the accident, Jake came into work and I asked how his day was. He sighed and said, "Honestly, not great. My sister's car broke down, so I had to let her borrow my truck, and I had to take my motorcycle to work. It sucked." I empathized with him, as I usually would, but little did I know that small twist of fate would change the trajectory of how the night concluded and how his words would come back to haunt me. That night, a few of us from work decided to go out to a bar the way we usually do almost every weekend. Lily and I got there early to have a few drinks. The bar was heavy-handed and generous, so by the time James and our 2 other friends, Natalie and Kim, joined, Lily and I were already buzzed, but we continued to all drink together throughout the night. Suddenly, the drinks hit me all at once and I started to feel sick. All I remember was going to the bathroom to throw up, walking Lily to her Uber, and then going to my car to lay in the back seat. My plan was to sleep it off and then drive once I was safe enough to do so. I texted Natalie that I was calling it a night, but she replied saying, "No, stay, we're going to another bar, come on, let's have a fun night." And against my better judgment, I said yes. Before getting to her car, I sat outside in the parking lot with my head down from being dizzy. James had even come over and held my hair back just in case I threw up. That I remember because it was such a sweet gesture, and I remember just having butterflies. And I don't know if it was from feeling sick or from how cute that was, lol. Then we decided that instead of going to the second bar, we would get food because I wasn't feeling well still. James had to even feed me fries because I couldn't lift my head up. We eventually decided to just call it a night. We all parted ways, however James, Natalie, and I were all heading to the same direction. With me and Natalie both being in the same car and James in his motorcycle, all I remember is looking up and seeing James pulling up right next to us and waving. I looked up just long enough to wave before putting my head back down. Less than 10 seconds later, Natalie said, "That's weird. Do you see those sparks?" I looked up to my left to see what looked like fireworks sparklers a few yards away. Within a matter of seconds, my eyes turned to the right and I see James laying on the road in front of us, no less than 6 feet away. I swear time slowed down. I didn't even have time to process before all of a sudden I feel and hear the impact of us hitting him going at least the speed limit, 55 miles per hour. The way his body looked laying there on the road and the sound of us hitting him, those images and sounds are stitched into my brain. I just remember screaming, we hit James, turn around now." Natalie hesitated, saying she was scared to turn around, but that she would pull over, even though it was 2 a.m. and the road was empty. But regardless, she pulled over. I jumped out and ran to him. He was unconscious, but groaning his words. Him just saying, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have driven, I'm scared. My pelvis hurts, I can't feel my fingers." When the first responders arrived, they asked what happened so they could assess him. I opened my mouth to tell him we hit him, but Natalie cut in just before I could, saying he just lost control of his bike. I saw an object on the road, I tried to swerve, but I think I hit something. Even though she heard me loud and clear say it was him over and over again, there was no doubt in my mind, his clothes, his helmet. In an instant, I recognized what I was looking at. I tried to say, no, it was him, I saw it, I heard it, the image is burned in my brain. But before I could get it all out, the ambulance pulled in, and everything shifted to loading him in. When statements were taken, Natalie denied what both of them had seen. By the end of the night, she admitted to OP that it was James, but on the drive home, she laid down the rule no one else could ever know. OP kept it quiet, not wanting to betray her friend, but the guilt never faded. In the comments, most urged OP to come clean, calling it cruel to let James live without answers, but OP never confirmed she would. She only admitted she tried to hint at the truth in her statement, but with no witnesses besides Natalie, who's sticking to her lie, nothing could be proven. Level 6. Boyfriend's dad acting creepy. A year ago, a young woman shared a confession on r/off my chest that began with something ordinary, being caught with her boyfriend by his father. But what should have ended in awkward laughter left her with something entirely else. My boyfriend and I are both young and live with our parents and got caught in the act by his father. I guess details aren't super important, but I was upright and facing the door, so when he walked in, he basically saw my entire body. And what's even worse is that we didn't even notice at first, so I still have no idea how long he was watching for until he yelled and started screaming at us. He was standing in the doorway for at least a minute just yelling and telling us how disgusting it is and how dare we do that in his house with family around. His parents, aunt, and little brother were all out and came back earlier than we thought, so we didn't know anyone was home. Until he left and told us he wanted to talk with us after we got dressed. My boyfriend snuck me out because I was crying and so embarrassed. Not only did his dad just see me naked, but with the way he was yelling, the whole family knows now, and I was not going to be able to sit through whatever lecture he had. When confronted with the unthinkable, the rational mind claws for explanations, anything to make it make sense. But when logic fails, denial becomes the last refuge. For OP, the odd shift in her boyfriend's father's behavior was impossible, so her mind dismissed the behavior, explaining it away as paranoia. As time passed, a pattern of creepy behavior emerged, chipping away at OP's denial until all that was left was the cold certainty that something is very, very wrong. The other big thing was for Father's Day. We were having a pool party at his house, and I was lying on a chair on my stomach while my boyfriend and his brothers were swimming, and I felt a slap on my ass and literally squeezed it and saw it was his dad. I look up at him and he says, "Oh, sorry, I thought you were boyfriend's sister." Which is very obviously a lie, as we're different races, and why would you slap and squeeze your daughter's ass? It's these little things, though. Every time me and my boyfriend are swimming, he wants to come join us. He offers to put my sunscreen on for me. I feel like I see him staring at me. He drops things around me and makes me pick them up, etc. The most recent one was we were having a cookout at his house, and I ran inside to rinse my plate and put it in the dishwasher, and I shit you not, he comes up behind me, grabs my waist and presses himself up against my ass. And I turn around to push him off and ask him what he's doing, and again he acts so surprised and shocked and apologizes and said he thought I was his wife, which again literally makes no sense. OP might have brushed these incidents off except for one chilling detail. Her boyfriend's father never mistook her or found excuses to touch her when her boyfriend was around. It only happened when he wasn't there. In the comments, Redditors begged her to get out. "You aren't safe in that house. Do not go there again. Tell your boyfriend. If he doesn't believe you, break up." One chilling reply came from someone whose sister had lived through the same nightmare. Their father escalated until he harmed her. When the truth came out, the family shattered, but no one ever blamed the sister for speaking up. That comment urged OP to report it before it was too late, but OP felt trapped. I don't have a good home life, which is the main reason I spend so much time at his house, and since I thought I was paranoid about him being creepy toward me, I just thought to keep doing the same. I've stopped going there every single day, and I've been really stressed at home, which I think may have also clouded my judgment about if what was going on was serious or not. So basically what I'm saying is, I don't really have anyone who can help me. So, at just 16, OP was stuck carrying a secret heavy enough to break an adult. And the most chilling part, men like her boyfriend's father don't stop. They only get bold. The high school catfish that nearly killed Brian. While most pranks end with the victims feeling frustrated or even annoyed, the details of this prank can only be described as disturbing and inhumane. So, this happened a few years back in my late years of high school. For context, there were other people involved. I'll call one Brian and the others Jack, Dave, and Mike. So, Brian. This kid wasn't the worst, of course, but he was kind of weird and really gullible. One time, one of my friends managed to catfish him off Instagram. Things didn't go too far, just cringy, sappy texts, but soon out of sympathy, things were admitted, and that was the end of that. That kid, however, was seriously gullible. There were so many red flags in that account my friend made, it appeared out of nowhere, the profile picture looked straight like stolen photo, you name it. Months prior to that, my friend Jack decides to tell me that he wants to catfish Brian again and take advantage of how gullible he is, and decides to soon set up a second catfish attempt, thinking to see how far Brian would really go. Soon an Instagram is made of some random girl and Brian buys it, and a group chat with me, Jack, Dave, and Mike is made to discuss this whole project thing. For a while, texts are innocent, acting as friends before things start getting serious. They're soon in a relationship, and Brian, thinking he's pulled a 10, is flexing his girlfriend like a piece of treasure. I kind of felt bad. Moving on, things took a turn. One night on the group chat, Jack, who's in charge of the Insta account, sends a screenshot of texts showing Brian being lustful, subtly asking for tit pics. Now, here's my part. I was the one sending fake porn pics to Jack to send to Brian, and when the first nude is sent, Brian sends a dick pic, which me and the three others laugh at because it was weird ASF. Anyway, from that, nudes every day pretty much, and I was supplying Jack with fake nudes often. Brian was hooked, full of lust, begging for nudes like some lowlife perp, to the point it actually disturbed us, and this was life-ruining for him. Things then take a turn. First, Jack poses that this girl we're pretending to be is a transgender man and got surgery to have male genitals, etc. And this Brian kid still fucking believes it, and I kid you not, he changes his fucking sexuality. His gullibility is too high up beyond comprehension, and now in this way, Jack would pose this girl as the man in the relationship that would be on top and all that shit. As you might have guessed, it didn't end there. The prank twisted into something darker, escalating into demands that were degrading, explicit, and deeply disturbing. And Brian, desperate for even a shred of affection, complied every time. Eventually, once they were done with him, Opie and his friends shared the evidence with the entire school. What's most unsettling is how OP told the story. There was no remorse or hint of regret, only the tone of someone bragging as if OP were reliving his glory days. The only moment fear crept into his words was when the consequences threatened him, not when Brian's life was unraveling, not when warnings came that Brian might end his life. And then, with a chilling detachment, OP ended with an update. Now he's kinda quiet, isolated, and yeah, I don't blame him. What else do you do when messages of you being desperate for news, gay media of you, etc. are being leaked? I hope he doesn't kill himself, and I hope he can move on and get better. The comments under the post were just as merciless to OP as he had been to Brian. Some wished karma on him, others called him the reason humanity is doomed. But one comment got deeper than the rest. It's not even the story, as fucked up as it is, that gets me, it's the way you tell it. That single observation exposed what made the confession so unsettling. Not just what was done, but the cold, almost gleeful way it was remembered. OP never replied to any of the comments. Level 7. The noise behind grandfather's door. In 2023, a Redditor posting as Throwaway121Throw shared a story that readers struggled to believe was real. From the very first lines, OP admitted her conclusion sounded insane, but in the absence of any other explanation, her mind was left with only one possibility. One so unthinkable, so grotesque, that even writing it down felt like a betrayal. And yet what she heard left her with no room for denial. So, my grandmother died about 8 months ago, and ever since, my mom has been going to visit her father much more often. Sometimes we all go together, our entire family, but as it's hard to align our schedules, most of the time she goes alone and sleeps over for a few days, usually the weekend. In my head, he was one of the nicest men ever. That's why this hit me really hard and threw me into a panic attack, because it's like seeing someone really decent do something you'd never expect. My mom did cheat on my dad a few years ago, and they fought a lot, but they worked it out, and now they're doing just fine. So, although I know she has done some stuff in the past, this was super disturbing for me, and I am honestly feeling sick even as I'm writing this stuff, but I'm hoping it will help me feel better to put it out there anonymously. He lives in a suburb 2 hours away from the city where we live. This September, I had finished with work and school for the month and had lots of free time, so I decided to surprise and visit him. I usually wouldn't go unannounced, but I knew he was alone and always eager to see me. We stayed for 2 nights. The only odd thing that happened was that in the middle of the first night, I heard like some weird grunting, but it didn't sound sexual at all. I just assumed it's some animal outside or something. I didn't make anything of it. I had completely forgotten about it. On the second night, I heard the same thing and immediately remembered that I had heard it the day before as well, so I got up to see what's up. I opened the window, and there was nothing out there, and even worse, I realized it was coming from inside the house, like the hallway. Then I realized that it was coming from my grandfather's room, and when I started listening more closely, I realized that it's actually very sexy, and it's just like an old man moaning like a creepy pervert. I didn't even think it was that disturbing, but I was pretty grossed out. Though OP was grossed out by what she heard coming from her grandfather's room, she wasn't particularly disturbed by it. In fact, at first, OP even found it kind of funny, like some twisted family gossip she could share with her mom the next morning. But then OP thought to check on her that night. Maybe she was awake too and heard it. Except when OP opened the door to her room, it was empty, which was weird because her phone was still on the bed and her clothes and shoes scattered as if she'd left in a hurry. The bathroom was empty and the house eerily silent. That's when it hit OP. If her mom wasn't anywhere else in the house, there was only one place she could be, inside the same room the noises were coming from. And why the hell would he be moaning with her in there if they were not doing something? OP continued. There's no other explanation. My body literally went stiff and tears started coming up immediately. I went back to the guest room and went to bed weeping. I don't, for the love of me, understand if they were not worried or how they didn't think I could potentially wake up and hear them. The next morning, life carried on as if nothing had happened, but OP couldn't unhear the sounds and could never look at her mother the same. Hoping for clarity, she turned to Reddit only to be met with disbelief. To others, her conclusion felt impossible. One commenter urged her to test the theory before revealing it to anyone in the family. Mention it to your mom, just matter of fact. Don't tell her you were looking for her and she wasn't in her room. Just, I heard Grandpa making some weird noises the other night, like sex noises. Her initial reaction will tell you everything you need to know. And if she lies about being in her room... And that's exactly what OP did. In an update, OP shared, "She was very weird about it, man. Literally, her face went neutral immediately after hearing me. I was really hoping I was imagining it, but her face gave it away. Really damn weird reaction. I tried to keep my demeanor the same, but my heart definitely sank when I saw her because I was like, damn, I think I'm desensitized about the whole thing now and actually don't feel stress rushing through me, but I'm now 99.9% sure she got creeped out by my question." If you want more disturbing icebergs, check out this video.